We're thankful to be joined by a guest today from the men's basketball staff, that being assistant coach Tanner Bronson.
Yeah, Coach, we appreciate you hopping on, man. Want to let the Gamecock fans out there learn a little bit more about this team and a little bit more about you, man, and what you do over there. Obviously, you know Coach Paris maybe better than about anybody. Been with him a long time. So appreciate you hopping on, and we were talking off air. I know you guys are got to be pumped just to tip this thing off here pretty soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I mean, it's Halloween today, so, you know, it's basketball season's here, so it's exciting to be here and talk about the group, and I know we're excited. It's been, you know, a few months with these guys, and we're ready for the games to finally count.
We were talking about it, I guess, earlier on this week after you guys had your exhibition game against NC State. Lost it at the very end, but it's more about, you know, the seeing what the team is and getting vibes and all that kind of stuff heading into the year more than the end result there. But I've never heard Coach Paris so excited after any game, and he's been here for 3 years. You guys have made the tournament once and all that kind of stuff. He sounded more excited about that loss on Sunday and what the potential of this team is than I think I've ever heard him before.
Yeah, I think this group is just a really fun group to be around. They get along really well. We have great team chemistry, and I think watching them perform against a team like NC State, who some people, whatever that means, has them in the rankings, or, you know, definitely, you know, top 30, 40 team, whatever that looks like. And to have a good performance and see some of the things that we've done well in practice and that we think we have, and then go ahead and execute some of those things, I think we were pretty excited about that. And we know this team has an incredible amount of potential, and just trying to build that as the season goes on, and especially as you get into SEC play, because we all know what that looks like.
How difficult is it in this kind of portal era where, you know, you talked about the chemistry? You know, now, interestingly enough, you bring back one transfer you already knew very, very well in Michi. I got to imagine that's kind of helped having somebody back with the program that knows exactly what Coach Paris and you guys want from him. But how difficult is it to build that chemistry in a short period of time when you have guys from all different programs, all different parts of the country, all different countries, and just kind of just molded and melded all together?
You know, it's a hard task. But I think, you know, the way we like to do it is we try to identify it in the recruiting process. Now, the transfer portal happens quickly. So, you know, if you're recruiting a high school kid, you might recruit them for a year or longer. You get to know their family, you get to know their coaches, you see how they interact. This could be a week, you know, when you get guys committed. But we feel like if we bring in high-character guys that really want to be good and want to win, that the chemistry will find a way to happen. And I think that's what this group is. We have a lot of those guys. And honestly, a few of them probably have felt slighted that, hey, you're not good enough to do it at this level, or your role wasn't what you wanted it to be. And I think that's always been something that you know, you saw 2 years ago with that group, felt really slighted and what we were able to get out of them. But then, you know, bringing a guy like Michi Johnson back, who knows what it's like to win in the SEC. He was an all-SEC player. He's so comfortable with our system, and he can help teach these guys and what it looks like. When you have that, I think that also helps.
Men's basketball assistant coach Tanner Bronson joining us here on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. We like to liken transfer portal recruiting to speed dating. Is that kind of an apt comparison?
I mean, that's about as good a description as you could possibly have. I mean, it's, you know, you get a call one day and you might have him committed by, you get it on Monday, you might have him committed by Thursday. I mean, it can happen very, very quickly. So you have to make quick decisions, and if you don't, then you miss on a guy, and then you have to go to the next one. So it happens extremely fast.
It seems like this team is built in a little bit different image than the one last year. Feels to me like a little bit back to Coach Paris's roots. It felt like there was maybe a little more emphasis on athleticism the year before. All these guys can shoot, man, obviously. What did you guys see just throughout the months of practice and then seeing it out there on the court against NC State? Like, just what stands out if Gamecock fans have not watched this team yet, what are they going to see in that opener?
Well, you know, I think our guard play is just much, much improved. I think those guys, the guard position, we got a lot of guys that can shoot the ball, that can attack, that know how to make good plays. So I think that part is exciting. We could play a lot of guards. They can, I mean, it can be a little bit quicker of a game for us at times, and they can shoot. And then in the front court, you know, with Colin and Nick, as good as they were for us last year, you know, physically and defensively, couldn't really spread the floor like that. Whereas the year before we had B.J. Mack, who did a really good job of that for us and really caused problems. We have a few more guys in the front court that can shoot the ball. So I think our spacing, I think it's just going to be a really fun brand of basketball to watch. And I know, coaches, that was our goal, going to the transfer portal, is to really get more skilled guys that can make shots and we can play and pass, dribble, shoot well. And I feel like that's what this group is. And there's a lot of guys that can do it. That might be one of the harder things, is figuring out who should be out there.
Your excitement's kind of matching what Coach Paris was talking about the other day. Let's go back to a year ago. Obviously, a rough season as a whole. What was kind of the vibe going into the year? Did y'all know you were going to have some of the challenges you ended up having as a team?
Well, I think, you don't necessarily know altogether. If you think about it, too, so that year we were still 10-3 in the non-conference. North Florida game and the opening night was one that you just would really like to get back. Any way you slice it. But then you go into the SEC play and you play all those close games and can't finish. I don't think the record was indicative of the team we had, but you also didn't have a way to easily create offense. And I think that was the difference last year. You knew you had a guy in Colin Murray Boyles who can do a lot of things, but even Colin's strength wasn't to just be able to go get a basket. He was a really good facilitator and an offensive rebounder and could do so many different things, as we're seeing in the NBA now. But I think, that's where we didn't know how good, the guards would end up being and if they could carry the day for us. And I think that's where it was a little bit different than this year. We have a little bit more experience, guys that have done it at a college level on good teams. And so I think that's where we're really, really excited about the skill of this group. Last year's skill, I think, wasn't what we're normally looking like on a Coach Paris team.
Coach, I like to pull back the curtain a little bit. I know every assistant coach, everybody on staff kind of has their own individual role. I see you, on TV or at the games. It seems like you're right there by Coach Paris during the games. On a day-to-day basis and then in-game, how do you kind of define your role within the program?
Yeah, that's a good question. Coach O he likes all his assistants to do a little bit of everything. Mm-hmm. I think part of it is developing to be, head coaches someday. I think, with him and I, since I've been with him for so long, this is year 9, I think there's a comfortability there and in some of the suggestions. I have the easy job. I get to make the suggestions. He has to live with the suggestions. So his is a little bit more challenging because whatever he decides, is always it's going to be his decision in the end. I think that's a little bit part of it. I work with the bigs a lot, involved in recruiting and in a lot of the different things, just like all our assistant coaches do. So I think maybe there's just some comfortability with the fact that I've been with him for so long and there's that trust that's been there.
So why have you worked so well with Coach Paris? Going back to your time in Wisconsin, spent time with him at Chattanooga, and obviously here at Carolina as well. Why has that worked to where you're in this position as his assistant now?
Yeah, I think it's basketball philosophy as a whole. I think the Wisconsin roots are in there from the type of player we like, the way we see the game, what winning looks like. I think it goes in all aspects of a program when you're trying to win is, the type of player you're bringing in, does it fit the system? What really translates when you're watching in scouting and working in practice and building your team and all those different things. I think that's probably why we, see eye to eye on most things and we can see things similarly. So I think that helps.
Other than Coach Paris, what do you kind of credit with kind of your basketball roots, your philosophy? You were with Rick Majerus at one point.
Yeah.
That's, legend.
Yeah.
Can you kind of speak on all that a little bit?
Yeah, my journey is pretty interesting. I've been really, really fortunate to work with unbelievable coaches. I played for Bo Ryan, who's in the Hall of Fame. I then was in the D-League as an assistant coach when it was the D-League. Now it's the G-League. For 3 years. My first head coach there is now the current head coach of the Phoenix Mercury, who was in the WNBA Finals, Nate Tibbetts. And then Rick Majerus was the first guy to hire me in college, who's a Hall of Famer. So I've been very, very fortunate to just see a lot of basketball and a lot of teaching in basketball my whole life. And then I also come from my family. I got 5 coaches in my family, including myself. So it's just
you didn't have a choice.
No. I always joke like I'm probably the 5th best coach in my family. My 2 sisters, my mom, and my dad. So, I've just been very lucky to be around a lot of really good teachers of the game.
I was going to say, did you ever have any other aspirations besides being a coach or being involved in basketball?
That's just always been my goal from day one. I think I was a unique person, and in high school, I knew that's what I wanted to do. Seeing it in my family, seeing what my mom did and my older sisters and coaching. So, and I was athletically, I wasn't gifted. Let's just say that. So I kind of knew that was going to be my path, no matter what level of basketball I ended up playing at.
Now, I know you said you're from the Midwest, but you've been in the Southeast for a while now. Been in Columbia for a while now, and I know you mentioned your family. How important are they to your success as well? And man, you have such a demanding job. I'm a new dad myself. How do you balance ball and just as important as your family is to you, obviously?
Yeah. My wife Jen, she married into this, and a lot of us that are in these types of professions, they don't have a choice in necessarily what it's going to look like, and they make a lot of sacrifices so that I'm able to do the things that I'm able to do. And my kids also, there's different school events or sporting events that you miss at times, but I think it's just you can't do it without the support of them, and they've been incredible in this journey for me. And I'm just very thankful to have them around, and they're huge Gamecock fans. I mean, my boys are as excited about the Gamecocks as anybody, so that's always really fun for me to kind of see and be a part of.
One of the things that we talked about so much with that team 2 years ago that made the tournament was how experienced they were. Guys like Talon Cooper, BJ Mack coming in that just played a lot of basketball. Last year's team not quite as experienced, and of course, last year's season wasn't quite as good, and they don't have the updated list out just yet on KenPom in terms of where the experience ranks nationally, but how does this year's team's experience compared to that team from 2 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar. I think there was something like we had 6 1,000-point scorers 2 years ago on that roster. And, I think by the end of this year, it'll be about the same with the group we have. You think about Michi Johnson, the 5th, 6th-year guy. You got Mike, who's started he was at Dayton as a freshman and played heavy minutes, but then started the last 2 years, including in the Big 12. You got Miles Studi, who we all know his story and what he's meant and been in the program a long time. And then you still got guys like Kobe Knox, who's been in the NCAA tournament starter, averaged 10 a game in the American. Elijah Strong, this is his 3rd year. Kreist has been 3 years. You got a variety of different guys that have played a lot of college games and played a high-level college basketball. And I think that's one thing that we looked at also as we were, building this roster, to have that experience and those guys that have played in these games and these situations. We all saw last year a lot of our troubles came in handling tough situations, especially at the end of games, where you feel like you definitely should win the game and you don't come out with the victory. So I think that'll definitely help.
Not an experienced guy, but we've got to ask you about Eli Ellis. Gamecock fans are talking about this guy.
Yeah,
1 million-something followers on social media. What can you tell us that we don't already know about Eli Ellis?
Well, it's been said by many people just how competitive the kid is. But I think the thing, that people really don't understand about him, because he is this big marketable guy with all the followers and social media, and we see all this. He's also very substantive. He has a lot of substance to who he is. He really, really is a winning type guy. He wants to make winning plays. He definitely has, a lot of flash in what he does. There's no doubt about it. But when it comes down to it, and it's about winning, and it's about competing, and it's about toughness, he's just not going to lose in that battle to too many guys. And I think that's what we saw when we were recruiting him, that this is going to carry over for sure, where a lot of people may have had doubts because, he's not athletic enough, or he's not tall enough, or whatever that looks like. I think just his overall competitiveness is incredible. And I think as, when people start to watch him play, I think that's what draws you to him, is you're like, how does he do that? How does he do that? He looks like Joe down the street, and he's out here against these big-time athletes, and he's just consistently getting things done. And I think that's a tribute to who he is.
Well, and, like in this football a little bit, we talk a lot about what Diego Pavia has done for a place like Vanderbilt, where he just has this different kind of mentality that the entire team resonates with. And I see a lot of similarities with the way that Eli Ellis carries himself, competes, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm interested to see how the rest of the team, uses that themselves and resonates with that, and hopefully can lead to some success this year as well.
Yeah, it's unbelievable watching Pavia, play and what he is. And again, a guy that's undersized for the position and whatever, but he's just got a lot of heart. And I think guys really want to follow that. And I think, when you play that hard, it makes other guys want to play that hard too. And I think that definitely carries over within the team.
We spoke briefly on him earlier, but what has having Michi back just meant for the team as well? And it just seems like there's kind of a connection with Coach Paris and Michi that maybe just goes beyond sports a little bit. Kind of a unique situation, obviously, with him coming back. He's even joked about it on social that, Ohio State, South Carolina, Ohio State, South Carolina. But we had him in for one of our Garnet Trust interviews, and he probably talked as glowingly about Coach Paris as any prospect or player I've ever heard, ever. So what is it maybe about those two guys that they just connect?
I think there's a lot of things. He was a big recruit in our first year. He went through the first year, which was a challenge, and really got better. In that second year, we had the season we had with a school record and wins. I think there was a lot of value. Coach was a really good mentor towards him and what that meant. We all know what this looks like this day and age with transfer portal. But I think, ultimately, I think he values the relationship with Coach Paris. He's a mouthpiece to the guys. That's not one of the coaches, which I think is a huge help when your players really understand and can see the vision that we're trying to give them to be successful. So he's just been a great leader, and I think he's come back with just this new energy and this newfound love for, going at it again and then being doubted again. And I think he really wants to prove that like this is the real deal, and he's an all-conference player, and he's the type of guy that can get this team to the tournament and, do some real damage in the SEC.
What, if anything, because he went back to Ohio State last year and only played a handful of games where he had some stuff off the court that kept him out the rest of the year. What did that year away do, and did that change anything about him for when he came back here?
Yeah, I think it's similar to, what happened with Miles. When you kind of feel like, hey, that might be it for me. My career might be over. I might not be able to play another college basketball game. And I think you go through some stuff where you really look at yourself, and I think there's a level of gratitude and appreciation that you have when you go through something like that. And I think that's also where his and Coach Paris's relationship was such an important piece. And so he's coming back to South Carolina with a love for this fan base and being a Gamecock and playing for Coach Paris. And when guys have an appreciation and a gratitude, sometimes those guys tend to overachieve, and I think that's something we're really hoping for and looking forward to.
Speaking of guys that are also just Gamecocks through and through, I know Kerry Rich has been around this program for decades now.
Yeah.
What has his role kind of morphed into within the program? How often do you guys kind of work hand in hand on things?
I can't describe how important he is to our program. He does so many things that don't get recognized, and he's such a valuable piece. I think there's nothing, we could do. It would be very, very challenging to try to navigate recruiting, navigate relationships within the university, navigate boosters. Former players. He has so many different ways that he affects this program, and his knowledge and understanding of the landscape and what it looks like here at South Carolina. I don't know if there is a bigger Gamecock out there, especially Gamecock basketball. I know that for sure.
Yeah.
But a South Carolina Gamecock, Kerry Rich, he's everything. He's dedicated his life to this university and its athletics program. So we're just very thankful that he's on staff and that he keeps sticking around every year.
Well, a couple weeks ago, you had SEC preseason media days, and you guys were picked dead last. Once again, like a couple years ago.
Yep.
Is it the same kind of rallying cry as it was 2 years ago, or is it just kind of like, okay, go out there, handle your business, and prove them wrong again?
I think you have to take it personally. It's something that what they say is, they don't think our roster is good enough, or they don't think our coaches are good enough. So it's definitely something that, you use as motivation. But I think those guys should really understand what that means, and that, that's not what people in our locker room feel. That's not what we think about this group. And a lot of people are going to have opinions. They're going to doubt us until we prove them wrong, and then they're going to try to jump on the ship and say how much they like us. Remember 2 years ago we had beaten Kentucky at home, who was top 5, and they still didn't want to rank us. Mm-hmm. That group turned it and then beat Tennessee on the road, and they said, don't rank us. We don't need it anymore. Your opinions don't matter. And I think that's kind of how you have to treat it is, hey, we got to go play the games and we got to play well. And we feel like we have a team that can do that.
We talked about this a little bit earlier, but what will Gamecock fans see from this team when they come out? Do you want to kind of maybe even just speak to them a little bit? I know you'd love to have a packed house out there to just kick this thing off here pretty soon.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing like when CLA is packed. I mean, we saw some of the best games I've ever been a part of in my life were some of those games we had 2 years ago, Tennessee, Florida, Kentucky at home. When that place is rocking, it's a lot of fun. And I think this group plays extremely hard. And I think they're good guys that are easy to get behind. And I think they represent all of, what Gamecocks athletics and what they've been about and what the fan base is about. So I think they come out, support us, and I think we got a chance to really impress, and I guarantee you'll want to come back.
Well, Coach, we appreciate you hanging out with us a little bit here, and I think we're all excited to see what this team's going to look like. We've been joking you're going to have to go to that first game with the press guide in hand because you're going to have to remember new names and new numbers and all that kind of stuff, but certainly hope you guys can replicate some of that magic from 2 years ago.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Again, Tanner Bronson, Gamecock men's basketball assistant coach, joining us here on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Sub.